Today, dear students, welcome to the session. We will have a talk, but in a workshop mode. Here delivered by Tamara Carleton, who by now you should be familiar with her. Tamara is helping us in collaboration with us to organize the whole MBA summit. She's a leading expert in innovation, strategic foresight, also visiting professor at EGADE Business School from the University of Stanford. Tamara, thank you very much for being with us. And well, I think we can get started now with our students. As you mentioned, along the way, if more students are joining in, it would be any problem, right?
Perfect. Well, thank you for the lovely words, Eric, and delighted to have all of you here for an early morning session. So while you're enjoying perhaps your cup of coffee and waking up, we can focus on this track theme, which is all about future you. And in particular, my session is focused on mapping your future network and growth path. So very fun topic and close to my heart. And what I thought I might do is help explain a number of the several tools that you can use to help you in this journey to figure out your personal future. And what does that mean then for your development, your potential, and where you see yourself tomorrow? So this is one of my favorite tools. It's called Crowd Clovers. And I'm going to draw this so you can see how it looks. And let me see if I can bring up a color that looks good as we talk. So this tool is called Crowd Clovers because you can see I'm drawing a four-leaf clover, and you're going to explore how to turn the crowd around you into strategic connections. So who do you know that can help you grow your network possibility, the ecosystem of the different talent and capabilities around you? Now, you sit at the center of your network, so this is me here, and we're going to fill in the four areas based on people you know. So in my case, if I look at my own life, I'm going to look at individuals that I directly have a relationship with in some way. So if you happen to know the president of a country or a rock star or the next Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, go ahead and include that as part of your map. So I'm going to start on the left, but you can go anywhere. So here on the left, these are catalysts. So think about people in your life who spark fresh thinking, new ideas. They may serve as a muse. They catalyze you into getting out of the box. So in my life, I can think about my children, and in particularly my son. When he was in his toddler years, he had to learn technology around him. And in particular, I remember one instance when he was about 3 or 4. We went into a consumer electronics store, and he had grown up with a tablet, particularly, a used Apple iPad, and he sees a show playing on one of the big TVs that he didn't like for a toddler. And he walks over and he immediately tries to swipe the show off the screen. Really interesting to me because I realized he had a very different interaction model in his head because he assumed that any device would act like a tablet. Versus I have grown up with other devices, and tablet is a recent device in a whole portfolio. So it was a great reminder as a catalyst, all the assumptions we bring when we learn something new. Now, you can then think about at the top, who are connectors in your life? Who helps connect you to other resources? Could be funding, equipment, other people, assets that help you expand how you can do different things. So I can think about the work that I do at Stanford University. There's a number of people who help put me in touch with a number of other labs and research groups. So I might put down Martha, who I know, who plays that role in my life. Now, on the far right, these are enablers. These are people who help you get it done. They help you deliver, they help you execute. So think about who helps you implement and supports the work that you're trying to do. So I could say, in my life, I have a senior coach, a lead instructor that I often work with. These are enablers that are very important to me. Now, along the bottom, these are promoters. Who helps broadcast you or your ideas in other communities? These are the people that you want at your party because they get everybody talking. They play an important role because they also help to broaden the reach and exposure of you to other people in work, life, career, or other elements and spheres. So I could say as promoters, I was actually just swapping some messages with David. He's a native from South Africa. A few years ago, brought me down to a part of the world in the African continent I wouldn't have thought of visiting right away. Fantastic. They have a rising generation of leaders, business schools as well. Definitely put me into a very different type of network and kind of exposed me in other areas. Similarly, I've been doing work with Sweden's Innovation Agency, and so there's a number of people here who have been really promoting and spreading the good word of what I do. So very quickly, this is the Crowd Clovers tool as applied to your own personal network. You can do a similar analysis for a project, a team, a business unit. But if we focus on your life as part of Future You, there's a number of filters you can use to analyze. How healthy is your network? How connected is it? So you could look at time. How often do you talk to these people, right? Oh, I call my parents maybe once a week, right? Versus if I talk to some students at Stanford, every 10 minutes there's a text going to mom. Hey mom, what do you think of this? Grandparents, how often might you connect with them? Old friends from college, right? When you graduate, how much will you stay in touch? So that's frequency. You could also look at the quality of the relationship. Hot, cold, lukewarm, what's the state? What's a good filter here for innovation? You might consider, what do you have in terms of formality? So formal or informal? So if it's formal, I'm going to draw a box. Formal describes a power relationship, meaning you might have a employer or employee connection. There are certain rules and regulations in place on how you operate and what that means. So for example, if I'm doing work with Stanford University, definitely clear policies that organize how we work together. Similar when I bring in a vendor or contractor or subcontractor like Jeff, we have an agreement, a statement of work that defines how we work together. Family, such as son here, well, that's more informal because that's a private family relationship. Here at the bottom, David, also very informal. But anytime we need to take action, we move that and he hands me to somebody who then formalizes and structures a relationship. So realize you have different ways to think about your network. So you can see a cleaner version of what I just demoed here with you all, and the definitions along the right side too: catalysts, connectors, enablers, and promoters. What I'd like you to do is find some paper around you, and we're just going to take a few minutes to get started. But give yourself a chance to map your own network. What does it look like? Who do you know as catalysts, connectors, enablers, and promoters? You might actually find there are people who span several of these dimensions. That is also okay. But it's a good way to start to explore who you surround yourself with, how you think about these people in your life. So let me play some music and have you just take a few minutes to try this, okay?
I will do one to myself, Tamara.
Because remember, this is a workshop, right? Get to do a little work. And then we're going to talk about your analysis.
Tamara, would it be possible to go back to the previous slide to see the definition for each category?
Yes. Thank you for the reminder. Is the audio okay? Not too distracting for people?
It's okay.
People would like another minute? So let me pause here and take a few minutes for us all to discuss how this looked. So actually, I'll stay on this slide. Was this easy or hard to do for anybody?
For me, what's hard?
Thank you for the honesty. I think most of us aren't used to thinking about the people we know in this way, right? Did anybody bring up their phone or take a look through any social media to remind themselves of names they know?
I just opened up LinkedIn.
I do find people who tend to be a little younger in age often do that to remind themselves. Did you find, or did anybody notice, or actually, uh, did you find that maybe certain areas were more dominated or is not evenly distributed as you'd like? Maybe some parts maybe seemed empty or not as filled as you might like.
Yeah, some were less filled in. For example, for me, in the catalysts, I guess it's less people than on the other ones, for example.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a good comment. And actually, one observation is that often when people start a new job or role, they often begin in the enablers bucket. They're helping to support and coordinate project efforts and allow other leaders and people around them to get things done. And then as they take on more responsibility, they then become often connectors because now they have some access to budget or resources to help the teams around them. What's interesting is you can see who are the better leaders because they're the ones that also try and take on the role of becoming promoters and catalysts. Who are they developing as talent and young leaders around them? How do they help provoke new thinking and be a good example to others. And some of this is often learned by doing or by watching others around you. And then you might find some of this when you go back to school or get your MBA degree as well. Other observations people have as they looked at their network. No worries. Just wanted to give people a chance to share if they had some comments. Let me share a table here of common insights or observations people have as they think about their own network. The first one, my network feels too small. There's no right size. But you might feel that you would like to know a few more people. Like Israel, you said as catalysts. Great. You might actually have met some people who could be considered as such. Or for others, you realize you want to find more promoters in your life and you haven't really been deliberate in doing so. Well, reconnect with folks that you haven't spoken to lately, but you still have a light connection, and then ask them and see maybe there's a way that you can turn or convert that connection into something a little bit more meaningful. And doing so, you can provide value by saying, do you need anything? Or I've been working on this. Might that be of interest? It's not meant to be forceful or heavy-handed. It's meant more as humans. You make a chance to reconnect. The other one here, the second one, maybe you don't think it's distributed well enough, or some of it seems light or empty. So ask the people around you that know you, friends and family and colleagues, and say, hey, do you know someone else that you think would be really good for me to get to know? I've been in my own little world. I often find this is true of engineers, research scientists. They only stay in their circle, and suddenly they realize they haven't opened up or looked up from their work. And so it's nice sometimes to say, hey, you know me, can you give me an idea of someone else to talk to? This third one, I'm not going to go through them all, but I do want to highlight this third insight. As people, as business managers, it's very easy for us to rely on the same people, right? I do a lot of work with my spouse, who is also a partner, business partner with me, and sometimes you can take these people for granted, or you have that one member of your team who is always pulling their weight. And it's nice when you start to build your awareness about your network to say, let me just say thank you. And studies show that appreciation goes much farther than a monetary reward. Because it is nice to have the company send you some bonus money, but at the same time, if you have the boss or the boss's boss say, hey, Elise or Eric, that was amazing, and it's just a short email or a text, you carry that much more in your heart and your mind. And that's also about being a good catalyst, as you create those moments of inspiration. The other one I do want to touch on, second from the bottom. Let's say you manage a team. Now you're going to be managing networks of networks. There are ways too that you can help cultivate other people's connections. And you can do this through coffee breaks if you're on site. You can do this with virtual meetings, just touch points, and sometimes it's through balancing. I mentioned formal and informal. Let's say you have a project meeting. You can say, every Friday it's joke of the day. Everybody come in with a joke. Or everyone talk about somebody who you just met who you think's interesting. And they're all different mechanisms to get other people to be aware, but then you start to open up the boundaries and you get to know each other as human beings in addition to being amazing workers or effective leaders and such. So just wanted to share some thoughts there. As a reminder, these are networks all around us. So here's an example from Stanford University. And Eric mentioned I have a few roles at Stanford. I also have written about and observed a long-running, award-winning class at Stanford called ME 310. And this class has been taught for over 50 years. Corporate sponsors work with student teams on design challenges. And they do this over the course of an academic year. Now, you can see, let me pick a color that stands out. Here's Stanford at the center of your screen. Typically, a year sees between 8 to 10 student projects. The projects have their own networks, right? Each project has about 3 to 4 people. So you can see there's a Stanford team, and they're working on a corporate project here that's Audi. And then there's a bigger team. In the last decade, every Stanford team of students works with a team of students at another institution. And typically these are universities outside the US working with Stanford. So you can see here, we have, let's see, there's Portugal, there's Japan, we have Australia, Finland, Germany. We've had Mexico in earlier years. We've got Colombia. So these are all overlapping networks. What's fascinating to me is, one, there's the hidden networks. You're not seeing who's behind the companies, right? You see the logos of IKEA and Ford. Well, they also have networks of managers supporting these projects. But then you have alumni networks. This is one slice of the class for the academic year. And this one is a map from a few years ago. So each year, it's a different network. And then what's interesting is the students, like you, are learning to already operate in this mode. So just as a reminder, as we become more embedded in today's workplace and ways of working in networks, to start thinking about this and seeing the systems around us. And another realization that comes out of understanding the networks is that they change. So what you map today as your crowd clovers analysis is that you might have a very different network map and view and set of challenges a year later or 6 months later, right? So just a good way to keep in mind so that you continually update this. How many of you added the name of somebody else in this session in your own crowd clover? Anybody? All right, 2 points. I saw some hands go up. How many of you added Eric or myself, as we are the co-MCs, graciously, or hopefully graciously, but thankfully leading the MBA Summit this year? You are now part of our network, and you should consider us as part of your extended network as well, right? So we should find each other on your social media platform of choice, LinkedIn or what have you, because that's also how you can keep this fresh. Okay, let's talk about a second tool called Future User. This builds on crowd clovers, where you can now start to think about the people in your life you know and who might be somebody that you would like to follow as a possible role model. Not to mimic or do exactly, but instead to consider as a boost. Somebody else in front of you might have made or carved out a path that you could at least borrow 60%, 80% from to learn. And maybe you might mix and match from different people because you have your own ideas of what you want to do. But it's a good reminder we shouldn't forget the histories walking around us, because that's also the patterns of the past that help us map the future. You know, you don't have to always start from nothing each day and freak out and worry about your personal future, you know, your future you. It's more to say, who could you start to learn from that might be a few steps ahead? So you could say, all right, step one. Yep, let me switch colors so we can see. Okay, step one here. Who do you know that might be ahead of you? And ideally, you should find somebody 5 to 10 years ahead, because that gives you a little bit more timeline to draw from. But you don't have to make it exact. And this is always an ongoing struggle. I certainly am challenged to find somebody doing enough similar work. But let's say you find somebody in your life. And this is where you can go back to your crowd clovers analysis. I've used this tool with other classes and programs before, and somebody said, I never thought about it. My grandmother or my dad actually has done some interesting decisions that help me learn where I want to go. And I don't want to be my dad, but I'm suddenly realizing I can at least lean and learn a lot from that. So you first pick your future target, right? This is somebody else that might be, I'm going to just say 10 years ahead. Well, guess what? That person didn't happen overnight. This person has to ask that person, particularly if they are in your network, or might have access to somebody you know through somebody else, to say, hey, what happened in your life to get you where you are? What decisions did you make? Did you wish you went to school earlier? Did you find getting married helped your career? Would you have taken a different career path or made some other choices? So you could find out that history. Then you can think about you today. We'll give you, maybe you'll put a little hat there. And you can say, where am I today? Because also you can realize you have certain choices in history. You also have a background too, decisions. And what you can realize, and I'm going to make this complicated now. Actually, let me use a different color, just so you have some fun. There are parallels that you can make where you today, at your age, was this person some time ago, right? Let's say if we do 10 years today, so 10 years ago, that person was your age. And if or when he or she looks back to say, when I was your age, great. What was similar? What was different? There might be some things that clearly are shared, right? You still love to talk. Maybe you both have a love of travel that doesn't go away. Maybe you're still wrestling with issues of love. These are certain constants that are nice to know and gives you perspective. There may be other things that are different. That also matters. A lot has changed over time. And if I'm just using a decade as convenience, you might say, okay, what's changed over time? Maybe clearly COVID. How do they think about now the way they work? What have they had to do differently in terms of maybe some of their professional development? Things like that, right? So you could think about, maybe even social media. This person is not a big user. You already have your own TikTok account and a lot of followers and your own podcast series. Great. That's a difference. And that's also important to consider because you're going to take that forward. And as you think about yourself moving into the future, so this is the future, you can say, what did this person do today that I might want to consider for now? Because they're already at the age you're going to become, if you're staying with me, right? Two different people. I'm just comparing person A and person U. Actually, we'll say this is person U, to say, what did they do that might impact how I want to be or how I think about what I want to be? Because this person might say, you know what? I would have made very different choices. And how does this then shape maybe as advice for you? So that's the whole setup of this exercise. And you can see it's very much a comparison tool. This can be done for customers, different market segments. I find it's a lot of fun to apply it to yourself. And so I'm bringing it here as part of our session. Let me walk you through a clean example where we first started. You identify your future anchor, somebody ahead of you. So in this case, you could say, you know what? I think Amy is doing a lot of what I want to be. So, okay, she's single, but she's leading a startup. That's something I think might be really interesting in my life. She got a biotech degree from a major university. Now, this is an American example. So she went to the Midwest at a school called CMU, and she's 34, so it's a little late stage, but she's going to settle down. So you can see here too, there's, in this case, As a company, you could actually go out and get this data. You can interview your customers and do surveys. From a personal example, you could just go talk to them and say, hey, let's grab some coffee or have a glass of wine. We'll figure this out. So that's the first step. The next step, and we talked about this, is you find out what did they do to get there. So in this case, how did she decide to do the startup? And you can actually go ask these kinds of questions. When did you do this? Did you have the training you wanted? What did you have to learn along the way? You know, you've been teaching students and staying active with your alma mater. So maybe with EGADE, you still want to have one toe back with the university. So you could find out from somebody else, what have they been doing? How are they staying active? So all of this is to give you perspective and fitting this together. And then as the third step, bring this knowledge back to you. Because at the end of the day, it's always about you, right? So understand who you are. But now you have some intelligence, other information to say, okay, in this case, me, I'm single still, but I'd like to maybe settle down. Or I'm also going to the same university, and one thing that hasn't changed is the importance of tech, right? We're seeing a whole set of advances in this area. And I still love fashion, but I'm young, I'm going to hang out with my college friends. So you can start to see these examples, and what you're going to do, like the example I demoed, is to look for where you want to find choices that you could avoid or repeat. What did you do? What would you have done differently? And what's similar or different to give you perspective, and then to say, how is that going to help me? So hopefully that makes sense as I was mapping through. Any questions around the setup of this tool or anything that we've discussed so far? Liz, I saw your hand go up.
Yes. What about the mentors? In which category should we put them? Or are these part of this model, or how we think about it?
So if I understand your question is, how do you know who to pick? This takes some practice, and you might do some experiments to say, I think I want to do something in this business area. Maybe you want to go more into parts of the fashion industry or music or something related to health tech. Then you can say, do I know anybody doing work in that space? So that might be the first question. So perhaps you're doing an internship or you've already done some work, and you can say, oh, yes, I'm in the space. That's because that's where I'm interested. And if I think about the people I'm working with, my boss's colleague, right, is actually doing some of what I think I want to do. Cool. That gives you somebody that you could consider as a possible role model, right? So that's a way to start thinking about and narrowing down somebody you could consider based on who you have connections to in your network. So maybe you haven't talked to your boss's colleague, but you know your boss. So you could say, hey, boss, I'm trying to understand a little bit more of my future path. Could we talk a little bit about what your colleague has done? Or do you think she'd be, or he would be open if I reached out to find out more of that person's life? And your boss could help make an introduction, and you can make your boss look good too and get some perspective. So that's one of the ways to think about it. Comments from others as you hear Elise's question. What might you say, or how would you pick?
So I personally also correlate this with the mentorship. I also can give this example. I have a mentor already, and what you just mentioned as the model kind of is, let's say informally, this is kind of the thing that we have been trying to do in our sessions. So it really matches a lot what you just mentioned with what I have been having in my sessions with my mentor.
Mentors are great because they don't have to be your role model, but in many ways they give you suggestions on where to look and how to think about things. And so you might say, you know, I've changed my mind. Okay, I'm not going to go into my family business. My parents are okay with it finally. I want to do this whole different idea where I'm going to create a new type of animal, I don't know, save the planet, right? And your mentor can help you come up with some ideas for that. But realize that's how you draw on the first tool we talked about, crowd clovers. Maybe you don't have a mentor yet. That's okay. And sometimes you may have mentors, but they wouldn't call themselves that. But they are serving a bit as an informal coach or guardian angel, right? You know, some people have some amazing grandparents who act like mentors and bossy supervisors, but have some perspective. And other times you may have somebody that, you know, is a good family friend or professor too, that you realize can give you that kind of perspective. So as you think about yourself, take a look at your crowd clovers network and also think about for yourself, do you have a role model that might be a few steps ahead of you in life, in career, that you could consider doing a future user mapping? And if you can't think of anyone, if you don't know a role model, who might you talk with in your network to help find somebody? Is there someone that you might think about? So I'm just going to give us 30 seconds here. But I figure as part of our session, this is time to carve out thinking about your future, as opposed, in addition to just hearing someone like me talk about it. All right, and you can always come back to these. The last tool I want to introduce will come up again in tomorrow's track, which is exploring moonshots and moonshot leaders and organizations. But I wanted to bring it in lightly for today's session because I think it can be useful as part of understanding our future you self. So here's the setup. All right, we have time today going into the future. As part of this, there are different timelines of growth. And I'm going to keep this pretty simple here. Horizon 1, or H1 for short, describes what's short term. What do I need to get done right now? So for a business, this would equate to profit. I just got to keep the lights on. I've got to make money selling my products and services. In your own life, this might be, okay, I got to pay bills. I got to feed the family. This is the work that I'm doing day to day. Second horizon, Horizon 2, or H2 for short. This is midterm planning. So these are the things that you're doing that are a little further out. So you might say, well, this is my MBA. I'm working on it now. Now might be this class, or maybe it's my thesis project. Well, maybe you're not doing the thesis first year versus more midterm could be second. You can play with the timing here, but you see that this is more midterm. Now H3, this is long-term horizon. These are decisions that you're making that are further out. So you might say, you know, this might be right after post-MBA, what I'm going to do the year after I graduate. I know that I want to be, I don't know, go into investment banking, right? That's hot. And then after, you know, I do iBanking here, and I'm going to start learning about blockchain. Then by Horizon 3, I want to run my own, you know, firm, right? So you can see here the timing of H1, 2, and 3. This comes from a model of innovation that my partner Bill Cockayne and I have extended. And you can see a cleaned up version that's talking about the horizons across growth, profit, growth, and longer term imagination and opportunity. But if we now think about how this fits into the metaphors we use to describe growth, I particularly like this quote from a CEO of a company called Logitech. They are based in Switzerland. They make computer accessories like computer mice and such. And the CEO says, we have our own innovation process that we call as trees, plants, and seeds. Each one of those has a time component to it. So if we bring this to the horizon model, you can see trees are H1. They are established, they're part of the broad forest you've cultivated. H2 are the plants. This is what you're trying to create into more of a garden that becomes sustainable and more established over time. And then H3, these are the seeds. So these are what you're trying to plant and develop into, more fertile conditions. So this is, some ways, is kind of you're thinking backwards, growing this. Can you give me some examples of what would be a tree? For a person, for life. Well, you could say something I'm doing now as my MBA is an established tree that I'm growing. Maybe something that's said here could be a family, right? If you're a little older in your life, you might have some children. That's something you've planted that is definitely firmly growing. How about a plant, H2? Can you think of plants that you're trying to put in the soil now? Maybe something you're doing as a new internship. If you're exploring a new area of work or a different type of business experience that you haven't done before, that might be a plant where you've spent some time. It's not a full tree, you don't have a career in it yet, but you are certainly growing it, right? Instead of a family, it could be, well, I've been dating the same person for a couple of years. It wants to be tree, but we're still at plant stage, yeah? So I'm having some fun with you, but that could be an example of a plant, right? It could be something that you're doing as a hobby. Maybe you like playing the piano and you haven't yet developed your skill enough where you want to do some interesting DJ mixes, but you've been practicing and you've been taking classes. So I would say that is definitely more plant, because if you've been doing it a little bit, that's where it's a hobby. Still, it's free time, but you have spent a little bit more time doing that activity. How about examples that are a seed? Well, maybe you've joined a book club and you're reading something interesting, new ideas of ways of investing Bitcoin, right? I don't know if any of you follow Elon Musk, but he's been stirring trouble in the Bitcoin space with some of his tweets in the last few months. It could be, instead of a hobby of music, what if you just started taking a new class? Right? That's a seed you're planting. I want to learn photography. I want to learn guitar. So I'm taking the class. It's a seed baby beginner level. Haven't done it yet as a hobby. I'm still here. So you can see that's an example of an H3. Other ones that come to your mind? It could be maybe you haven't started an MBA program yet, but long term you might like to do more in the academic space. So you might be making a list of PhD programs. So you haven't applied yet, but you're planting seeds because you're thinking about it, right? These are the kinds of schools I'd like to do, and maybe some of them are outside Mexico. So these are all seeds, things that you're exploring. Maybe a little more conceptual, but I thought I might have you reflect for a minute. And can you think about anything in your life that would be or equate to being a tree or a plant or a seed? And can think of maybe a new seed that you would like to try next. So I'll give you a minute for that. I like Javier's comment in the chat. Okay. And realize you will be planting all your life, so don't worry about it. So then there's a fourth horizon that you may have seen in the model, and this is the ideas. Where do you have the inspiration, the new vision to find the seeds? They don't just happen out of nowhere. So what are you thinking about that gives you that interesting push? So this also connects back to the catalysts, if you remember from crowd clovers. Who do you go to for inspiration? Who helps you think about new seeds? Where should you be looking? And maybe it's not people, right? So H4 inspiration here could be events like the MBA Summit from EGADE this year. This could be books you're reading, movies, trips, all sources of personal inspiration, family events, reunions. Maybe you're starting a tradition of college trips. All of these are possibilities to get you to think about the H4 here. And where would you like to start looking more? So note that for yourself. The other reminder here, all of these horizons start today. Meaning, while you are tending to your trees, you are also watering plants and hopefully cultivating a few seeds at the same time, which means you're thinking about all the four horizons and simultaneously. So what would be the right split of time and energy? So you might think about that for yourself. For a company, this translates into saying maybe 70% of our resources and allocation for staff go into H1, and then we split the rest across H2, 3, and 4. For yourself, you may feel like, oh God, 99% of my day is H1. I just was lucky enough, I woke up in time and I showed up for this session. All right, that's H2, 1%. Or you might be more deliberate because you've carved out the time and you're doing your degree. That actually helps a lot of people think about the time because now they have some luxury to think about thinking versus just always having to do work. So think about your own ratio today. How do you split your time across the horizons? Hopefully it adds up to 100%, but think about what is your split today? And you can be honest with yourself because it's good to note this down as well. Okay. You've now had a chance to very quickly learn 3 tools to help you with your future development. So can anyone tell me what is crowd clovers? What do we use this tool for?
Or mapping your network.
Exactly. Mapping who you know and being a little bit more strategic or aware and mindful about these connections. How about future user? What do we use this tool for?
The plan that you're going to do to expand your network.
Yes, and linking this to your a possible role model, somebody a few steps ahead that can give you some insight for your own future development. And then somebody help out Elise for Horizons. What did we do with this tool? Anyone want to comment on what that tool is for?
Yeah, it's to help us to think about the short, mid, and long term, and think which activities do we want to plant now to harvest in the future.
Excellent, Noel. Exactly. This is a tool to help us understand the different timelines that help with our planning and growth. Okay. There's a whole set of tools that I use both with my Stanford programs, but with teams worldwide. We focused on 2 of them, and then For Horizons has another body of work behind it. But if you're curious, you can download this playbook, and it might be a good refresher. I encourage you to continue using these tools because your network keeps developing. Your future path doesn't stop. And you can download the playbook for free. And I would say just jump to the 2 tools, although you're welcome, of course, to see the others from this link here. So thank you. We have a few minutes left for questions or general comments. I'd love to hear from many of you and, of course, to stay connected as well in the spirit of our session.
Any more questions for Tamara, students?
Thank you, Javier. Lovely.
Thank you very much, Tamara. It was really very nice, very useful, I guess, these practical tools that sometimes we tend to, I don't know, to study more complicated models in order to figure out how to make an impact in our network and so on. But I think this very insightful and practical framework that you presented today. Thank you very much, Tamara. I don't know if there's any questions for Tamara before we close the session for today. Not really. Tamara, can you just let us know a little bit of a preview of today afternoon, or I don't know if Mario's still here with us.
Yes, you're right. I see Mario is with us, but I'm not sure if he...
Yes, yes, Eric, I'm here.
Maybe, Mario, can you tell us a little bit of a preview of what we can expect from your workshop today in the afternoon?
Yes, of course. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here with Tamara. It was a very interesting, amazing tools, a very interesting workshop. In the afternoon, we're going to have another version of this kind of activities. When I say another version is, I had the fortune of meet Tamara several years ago. We have, I have learned a lot from the foresight practice of Tamara. We have also used and created another methods. So in the afternoon, we are going to talk about how you could identify the areas in your life, professional life, personal life, etc., that you want to develop according or in need or depending of the opportunities or threats that you are going to find in the future. We are going to use several tools that could help to the participants to identify those opportunities and threats and design paths to grab the opportunities and protect from the threats. It will be a workshop mainly. We are going to have we are going to work individually, and in a brief segment, we are going to work in teams to help each other to try to find these opportunities in the future.
Thank you, Mario. Certainly complementary with what today Tamara presented to us. Thank you, Mario, and we will see you in the afternoon. So, dear students, we hope that most of you could be able to join in the afternoon session. And also for tomorrow, we have 2 very interesting workshops on moonshots. Tamara, can you say just a few words about what we can expect for tomorrow's sessions?
Yes. So these workshops tomorrow as part of Track D will be taught by Bill Cockayne and Armand Aman together. It's actually going to be the same for morning or afternoon, so you can join based on your schedule. And the session will explore what does it mean to create and lead a moonshot organization? How do you think about big ideas? And what does it mean to create something that is moonshot worthy? And it's definitely going to be hands-on, and I think it'll be a lot of fun as well.
Thank you, Tamara. We hope to see you, all of you, also tomorrow. And don't forget that on Friday, we have our second social mixer. Eva has been posting some instructions for the videos that you have to produce for the social mixer. So we also hope that you can participate in that part of this week's event. And also don't forget to sign in for our challenges in our last week. Next week, we will have 4 challenges. You have all the information in your email. So please don't forget to consider participating. Thank you very much. And Tamara, thank you very much for today's session. We will see you around these days. Well, we stay in close contact with you. Thank you, Tamara. And thank you for all.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Tamara.